Ever lie awake replaying one sentence you said in a meeting 9 hours ago, editing it, defending it, rehearsing the smoother version you wish you'd delivered? Ever reread a message you already sent 3 or 4 times, hunting for the mistake that's going to turn a stranger against you? You're not broken and you're not weak. The thing keeping you up was never a thinking problem at all. It's a targeting problem. Here's what almost no one tells you. Your mind isn't too loud. It's aimed at the wrong things. The sealed past, the imaginary audience, the arrow already in flight. So over the next half hour, I'm going to hand you 10 principles the Stoics worked out 2,000 years before anyone had a glowing rectangle to stare at. 10 ways to retrain where your attention lands. And by the end, when we come back to that ceiling at 2 in the morning, you'll know exactly where to set the thought down. Not think harder, aim better. That's the whole game, and it starts with the simplest sort you'll ever make. Start here, because everything else rests on it. Epictetus, a man born a slave, who understood better than most of us how little of life we control, said the single most freeing act available to a human being is to divide the world into 2 piles. What is up to you, and what is not. That's it. 2 piles.
And nearly all of your suffering, he claimed, comes from reaching into the wrong pile and squeezing, grabbing something that was never yours to move and straining at it night after night as if effort could change its nature. Picture 2 travelers at the same airport gate. The flight is delayed 3 hours. Somewhere across town, a dinner that mattered is quietly slipping away. The first traveler paces. He refreshes the app every 90 seconds. He drafts a furious message he'll never send, invents the airline's incompetence in vivid detail, narrates the whole injustice to the stranger beside him. The second traveler opens a notebook and draws 1 line down the middle. On the left, he writes the things that are not his: the plane, the weather, the crew, the closed runway. On the right, 1 word: reschedule. Then he makes a call, and he's done. Same delay, same gate, same 3 hours. One mind is on fire. The other has already landed somewhere quieter. And the plane, you'll notice, does not care which traveler you choose to be. So when a thought starts to loop tonight, run it through 1 question before you let it in. Is this the left pile or the right? Is this mine to move, or am I just squeezing? Because if it isn't yours, you're not solving anything. You're suffering with extra steps. Name it, set it down, and spend your 1 life acting only on the pile that answers to you. But knowing what's yours is only half of it, because the mind has a second trick. It doesn't just grab the wrong pile, it time travels. It runs ahead into a future that hasn't happened yet and rehearses it in the dark. So the Stoics did something that sounds at first completely backward. The second principle: rehearse the worst on purpose. The Stoics had a name for it: Premeditatio Malorum, the premeditation of adversity. They would deliberately sit down and picture things going wrong, not because they were gloomy and not to marinate in dread, but because they understood something about fear that we keep forgetting. A fear you refuse to look at runs in the background forever. It hums under everything. But a fear you turn and face all the way to the end tends to shrink and go quiet. Think about the last time you sent something that mattered, a job application, say. The moment it leaves your hands, the mind clocks in for its shift. What if they laugh at it? What if silence means no? What if that was your 1 real shot and you already blew it? That loop runs precisely because the fear is unfinished. It keeps circling back because you never let it reach an ending. So give it one. On purpose, calmly, play the whole tape to the last frame. They reject you. Fine. Now what? You email 2 more companies.
You ask a friend to look at your resume with honest eyes. You are still housed, still fed, still exactly who you were this morning. And the instant your mind sees there's a floor beneath the worst case, solid ground down there, not an endless drop, it loses its reason to keep you awake rehearsing the fall. So do it once, deliberately, in daylight. Walk all the way to the bottom of the fear and build a small, plain plan for what you'd actually do if you landed there. A disaster you've already rehearsed can't ambush you at 2 in the morning. You've been there. You know the way back. Still, even a rehearsed fear can feel enormous when it's pressed right up against your face, which means the next problem isn't the fear at all. It's size. and the Stoics had a strange and beautiful fix for size. The third principle is the one Marcus Aurelius returned to again and again in his private notebook, the view from above. He would deliberately lift his perspective up and away, picture his worries from a great height, set them against the whole sweep of the world and the long roll of time, because he understood that overthinking survives on a lie about proportion. It tells you this thing is enormous. The view from above simply calls the bluff. There's a modern version of exactly this.
Astronauts describe something researchers named the overview effect. The writer Frank White gave it that name after interviewing dozens of them. You lift off the planet, you look back, and Earth is suddenly a single small marble hanging in black nothing. And nearly every one of them reports the same interior shift. Their private crises reorganize on the spot. Borders they'd been taught to die for simply vanish. Old feuds shrink. The entire planet, every organism on it, fits under a raised thumb. Now, you can't fly to orbit tonight, but the move they make by accident, you can make on purpose. Take the thing eating you alive right now and hold it up against some real scale. Will this exact worry matter in 5 years? Would it even register from 10,000 feet? Set it against the 200,000 years human beings have been walking around, loving and losing and lying awake just like you. The problem doesn't disappear. That was never the promise. It just snaps back to its actual size, which was never as large as your face pressed flat against it made it feel. So when a worry swells until it fills the whole windshield, pull back on purpose. 5 years, 10,000 feet, the long human story. Proportion is the one thing a spiral cannot survive.
But zooming out has a twin move, and it points the opposite direction, not out toward the stars, but in, all the way down to the one place you actually live. The fourth principle, confine yourself to the present inch. Marcus kept reminding himself of something so obvious we walk straight past it, that no one has ever lived a single second in the past or the future. You only ever live here, in this bin sliver of now. And this exact moment, he noticed, is almost always manageable. It's the imagined timeline that's unbearable, never the present inch. Picture a climber on a hard rock face. If she looks up at the summit, still hours of brutal work away, and then down at the drop yawning beneath her heels, her hands begin to shake, and her mind floods with everything that could go wrong on the way. So she doesn't. A good climber trains her eyes to go to one place only, the next handhold, the single crack within reach of her fingers right now. She moves to it. Then she finds the next one. The wall didn't get any smaller. Her attention got narrower, and narrow attention is steady attention. And here's the part worth sitting with. Almost all of your overthinking is you trying to climb the entire mountain in your head at once, all of it, tonight, while your body stands perfectly still in a dark room. So ask the climber's question.
What is the single next handhold? The one small action actually available to me in the next 10 minutes? Then do only that. The future is not a problem you're required to solve before you sleep. It's just a long series of present inches you haven't reached yet, and you'll reach each one the same way she does, one handhold at a time. Now we've dealt with the wrong pile, the unfaced fear, the false size, the runaway timeline. But there's a deeper mechanism underneath all of them, the quiet place where every spiral is actually born. Epictetus put his finger on it 2,000 years ago, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. The fifth principle, and maybe the hinge the whole thing turns on. It is not the event that disturbs you. It is your verdict on the event. Epictetus said it plainly. Between the thing that happens and your suffering, there is always a hidden sentence, one you added yourself, so fast you never even saw your own hand move. And that sentence, not the event, is where overthinking lives. Here's the whole thing in miniature. You send someone a long, warm, careful message. They leave it on read for 6 hours, and then reply with a single letter, K. That is the entire event, one consonant on a glass screen.
But watch what the mind builds on that tiny foundation, brick by brick, in seconds. She's angry with me. I said something wrong.
I always say the wrong thing. People get tired of me eventually. Everyone does. None of that arrived in the text. Not one word of it. You wrote the whole story yourself, and then you sat down and reacted to your own writing as though the evening news had just delivered it to your door. The letter is neutral. The 3-paragraph tragedy is entirely yours, which sounds like the worst news in the world until you turn it over and find the gift hidden underneath. If you're the author, you can stop writing. An author always can. So the next time distress lands, do one hard, clean thing. Separate the raw fact from the story you stapled onto it. Say out loud, if you have to, only what literally happened. She replied with 1 letter, full stop. And then notice, really notice, how much of the pain you were carrying was never reported to you at all. You published it yourself. That editing hand, the one that writes the story, does its worst work on 2 subjects: the future, which we've started to disarm, and the past, which brings us to a kind of thinking that feels exactly like responsibility, but is really something else entirely. The 6th principle asks for something that sounds almost impossible at first: learn to meet what has already happened without protest. The Stoics reached for amor fati, a love of one's fate, but you don't have to love the past to stop waging war on it.
And that's the word that matters: war. Because the past is the one thing in the entire universe that is fully, permanently, without exception, out of your control, which makes replaying it the purest wasted thought there is. You fumbled a presentation, you skipped a slide, you froze on a question you knew cold, and now you're driving home running it again and again, as if the replay were a rescue mission, as if enough rewatching could somehow reach back into that conference room and fix the thing. But the meeting is sealed. It is as finished, as fixed as the boiling point of water. Relitigating it is screaming at an old photograph, demanding it smile differently this time. And the only living thing left in that memory, the only part that can still change anything, is the lesson. You can mine the lesson in about 90 seconds. Everything after that, every extra lap around the track, is self-punishment wearing the mask of responsibility. It feels productive. It feels like taking it seriously. It isn't. It's bleeding for no one's benefit. So give any mistake 1 focused pass. 1. Mine the lesson, write it down if you need to, and then treat the replay button as broken, because it is. You are allowed to learn from the past without moving back into it and paying rent there. So far, this has mostly been you, alone with your own mind.
But a huge share of overthinking isn't private at all. It's social. It's the endless, exhausting labor of guessing what other people think of you. And the Stoic cure for that one is almost funny once it lands. The 7th principle: stop auditioning for people who aren't watching. Marcus wrote with real bafflement that we love ourselves more than we love anyone else on earth, and yet we somehow value our own opinion of ourselves less than the opinion of total strangers. Read that twice. We'll ignore what we know to be true about who we are and hand the verdict to people whose names we don't even know. Psychologists put a number on this. In a study run by Thomas Gilovich, a student was sent to walk into a room full of peers wearing a deeply embarrassing t-shirt, certain, absolutely certain, that everyone would notice and remember and judge. Afterward, the student guessed that roughly half the room had clocked the shirt. The real figure was a small fraction of that. Most people hadn't registered it at all, and the few who had already forgotten by the time they were asked. Gilovich called it the spotlight effect. We wildly overestimate how closely anyone is watching us, because each of us is the permanent star of our own film, and we quietly assume everyone else is sitting in the audience of that same movie. They are not. They're the star of theirs. They're standing in front of their own mirror, worrying about their own t-shirt, rehearsing their own sentence from their own meeting. So before you spend a whole hour dissecting what someone must have thought of you, remember the shape of things. The audience you're performing so hard for is mostly imaginary. And even the few real members left at intermission and drove home thinking about themselves. There is exactly one person in the theater for the entire run of your life. Live for that reviewer. Live for you. And that one reviewer, the one person present for all of it, here's the thing we hide from ourselves most carefully. That person is on a clock. So were the Stoics.
So are you. And they believed the honest arithmetic might be the most freeing idea of them all. The 8th principle is the one people find darkest at first and lightest in the end. Remember that you are running out of time. Seneca argued that life isn't actually short. We just waste staggering amounts of it, pour it out on things that were never worth it. And almost nothing pours it out more quietly than a mind sitting up in the dark, chewing on what cannot be changed. Try a piece of arithmetic the Stoics would have loved. Say you're 40, and say you're lucky. You'll reach 80. That's 40 more years, which sounds like an ocean, until you count it in Saturdays. Roughly 2,000 of them left.
Not an ocean at all. A number you could nearly pour into a jar as marbles and hold in your 2-cupped hands. 2,000 more real weekends. And now, picture yourself spending one of those marbles, one whole, non-refundable Saturday's worth of your attention, lying awake re-editing an email that the person on the other end forgot they'd even received. Put it in those terms. Hold the marbles in your hands, and the loop stops being merely painful. It becomes an insult to something you cannot buy back at any price, in any amount, ever. That's the turn Seneca wanted you to feel. Death doesn't make your life meaningless. It does the opposite. It makes wasted attention unforgivable, and every hour you reclaim, precious. So when you catch the mind grinding away on something small, price it honestly. Price it in time you will never get back. Would you trade one of your remaining Saturdays for this exact thought? If the answer is no, and it's almost always no, then take the attention back and spend it somewhere that deserves you. Knowing all of this is one thing. Being able to sit still inside uncertainty when your whole body is screaming at you to resolve it right now, that's a different thing entirely. And it turns out that isn't a matter of knowledge at all. It's a matter of training. The 9th principle, train the uncertainty muscle.
Seneca gave his wealthy friends a strange assignment. Set aside a few days, he said, to live on the plainest food, the roughest clothes, the hardest bed, and to ask yourself the whole time, is this the condition I so feared? He wanted them to taste the very lack they were terrified of on purpose and discover that the mind survives it easily. Because here's the quiet truth about overthinking. A great deal of it is simply a low tolerance for not knowing. And tolerance isn't something you're born with or something you can wish into being. It's something you build in the small hours, long before you need it. Picture 2 people walking into the same uncertain week, a decision pending, an answer that won't come for days. The first has spent years quietly engineering every discomfort out of his life, warm at all times, full at all times, never bored, never cold, never made to wait. To that man, not knowing feels like a 5-alarm emergency the mind has to put out this instant, so it spins and can't stop. The second man takes cold showers he genuinely doesn't enjoy. He sits with the hunger before lunch instead of killing it the moment it arrives. He does hard, pointless things now and then for no reward, except the practice of doing them. To him, discomfort is a familiar room he stood in 100 times, not a fire alarm.
So when the uncertain week comes for him too, he can let the question stay open. His whole nervous system isn't screaming to slam it shut, because he taught it, on purpose, that open questions don't kill you. So do small, uncomfortable things you don't have to do. The cold rinse at the end of the shower, the snack you skip, the longer, harder way round. You're not punishing yourself, and you're not proving anything to anyone. You're teaching your own body a single lesson it badly needs, that discomfort is survivable, that uncertainty is survivable. So it finally stops treating every open question as a crisis to be overthought shut. Which leaves one last principle, and in a way, it's the one all 9 others were quietly building toward. Because underneath every spiral we've named tonight is a single refusal, the refusal to let go. The 10th principle, and the one to carry out the door with you. Aim well, and then release the arrow. The Stoics loved the image of an archer. Your task, they said, is to choose your target, aim with everything you have, draw the string clean and true, and then let go. And here's the part that matters most. The instant the arrow leaves the string, the wind, the target's movement, 100 forces you'll never see,
None of them are yours anymore. They never were.
Overthinking, at its root, is the refusal to accept that the arrow has already left the bow. You prepared for the interview. You chose your words, you slept, you showed up as the best version of yourself you had that day. The arrow is gone. It's already halfway to the target. And yet there you are in the parking lot afterward, re-gripping a shot that left your hands 20 minutes ago, replaying it, as if enough mental clenching could reach out and steer it in midair. It cannot. The wind of their budget, the mood of the person across the table, the other candidate you never even saw walk in, not one gust of it bends to your rumination in that car. The master archer, the Stoic said, feels no anxiety once the arrow is loose. Not because he stopped caring, the opposite, because he poured every ounce of his caring into the one part that was actually his, the aim. And the moment the shot was no longer his to hold, he gave it its freedom, cleanly, and turned to the next thing. So pour yourself completely into the aim, the preparation, the effort, the honest choices, the part that genuinely answers to you. And then, consciously, out loud if it helps, let the outcome go. You are responsible for the shot. You were never, not once, responsible for the wind. So come back with me to where we started. It's 2 a.m. You're staring at the ceiling, and there's that one sentence from that one meeting, running its lap again, editing, defending, rehearsing the version you wish you'd delivered. But something is different now, because now you have somewhere to put it. You can ask which pile it's in, and feel your hand let go of what was never yours to squeeze. You can walk the fear all the way to its floor and find solid ground down there. You can pull up and out until the thing shrinks back to its real size, or narrow all the way down to the single next handhold in front of you. You can peel the story off the fact and notice how much of it you published yourself. You can give the past its one lesson and let the replay button stay broken. You can remember that the audience is imaginary, that the Saturdays are numbered, that the arrow is already flying, and the wind was never yours to steer. Your mind was never broken. Hear that plainly. It was never broken. It was just aimed, night after night, at the wrong pile, the sealed past, the imaginary crowd, the shot already loosed. These 10 principles aren't 10 more things to think about. They're 10 doors out of thinking. And you don't have to walk through all of them tonight. You don't have to win the argument in your head before you're allowed to sleep. You only have to notice which pile you're holding and set it down. So set it down.
The meeting is over. The email was received, or it wasn't. The wind will do what wind does. And you can finally close your eyes. If this gave your mind somewhere to rest tonight, stay with us a while. The next one goes deeper still. And we'll be right here, in the quiet, whenever the ceiling gets loud again.